From across the nation and around the world, for Pacifica Headlines, I'm Jesse Lent.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars.
President Donald Trump appears to call off peace negotiations with Iran at the NATO summit in Turkey today. Footage and reporting courtesy of the BBC. U.S. officials said yesterday that military units had struck more than 80 Iranian targets in response to attacks on 3 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz earlier this week. Iranian officials have not directly claimed responsibility for striking the ships, but the country's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, announced that it was targeting U.S. military sites in Bahrain and Kuwait following the new round of U.S. bombing. NATO Chief Mark Rutte called the American strikes, quote, absolutely necessary in response to Iran's breach of the ceasefire. But Iranian Parliament Speaker and head negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says it was the U.S. who violated the Memorandum of Understanding the two countries signed last month, citing U.S. attacks on Iran, renewed oil sanctions, threats of further strikes, violations of Iranian, quote, adjustments in the Strait of Hormuz, and continued Israeli attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon in a post on X. Multiple attacks on the Iranian port city of Bandar Abbas overnight are heard in this BBC video, with several explosions visible and flames seen rising over a facility as the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran enters its 131st day. It was not immediately clear from the footage which sites the U.S. was targeting. A member of the IRGC Navy was killed during a confrontation with U.S. drones in the southern port city of Bandar Mashar, Iran's Tasnim news agency reports. Iran is currently in the 5th of 6 days of funeral services for their former supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, killed in the first day of the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran back on February 28th. Islamic tradition requires that the body of a deceased Muslim be buried as quickly as possible, ideally within 24 hours of passing, but Iranian officials had been waiting until an interim ceasefire was in effect with the U.S., presumably out of concern for the safety of millions of their citizens who are estimated to have attended the funeral services this week. Last night, Khamenei's body arrived in Najaf, Iraq. Local authorities declared today a public holiday with procession ceremonies starting at 6 a.m. local time. President Trump is currently at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. The president said he's only attending the summit this year because it is being hosted by his friend, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who welcomed Trump in person at the airport, according to the BBC. Trump announced today that he has ordered Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to cut off all trade with Spain, calling the country a, quote, terrible partner in NATO. Back in March, Spain shot down a U.S. request to use joint military bases on its territory for operations against Iran. The country also closed its airspace to U.S. planes involved in the war. Speaking from NATO today, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen responded to Trump's remarks earlier in the day that the U.S., quote, needs Greenland for, quote, the protection of the world, not just the United States, and it's very important. Footage courtesy of Agence France Presse.
The U.S. position is unfortunately very clear on this topic, and our position is as clear as it has been all through. Greenland is of course not for sale. We are a sovereign state, and we need everybody to respect our territorial integrity.
And a backlash is growing, particularly in Democrat-led states, over National Guard deployments to Washington, D.C., after the Guard's numbers increased precipitously ahead of last week's celebration of the country's 250th anniversary of independence from Great Britain, according to the AP. Kaya Chatterjee, executive director of the organization Free D.C., told the news agency that D.C.'s residential neighborhoods are a red line for areas they will tolerate the Guard's presence.
If they want the federal district and the mall, they can have it. But they will never take our schools. They will never take our parks. They will never take our community. And so if they are going to come into our territory, then they are going to hear us.
Those are the latest Pacifica headlines for the Pacifica Network. I'm Jesse Lent.